I'm Olivia Moore, I'm 29 years old, and I've spent most of my life trying to be invisible at family gatherings, until one night, I realized invisibility wasn't even a mercy. It was just the prelude to being erased entirely. The last family reunion I attended ended with my dad raising his glass, making his usual toast, and then casually destroying me in front of a room full of relatives. His words still echo like static in my ears. I'm proud of all my children, except the loser. That was me. The loser. The only daughter he could never quite mold into something useful. I got up and walked out of that house before I even knew where my legs were taking me. But walking out was only the beginning. Let me tell you what happened. Growing up in a modest suburb outside Cincinnati, my family seemed normal enough from the outside. You know, the kind of people who sent holiday cards with coordinated outfits, made Pinterest-worthy birthday cakes, and had a backyard with an actual koi pond. But under all that suburban polish, our family was governed by one unbreakable law. My dad's approval was currency. And most of us were flat broke. My dad, Charles Moore, was a retired Marine-turned-contractor-turned-motivational speaker. And if that sounds exhausting to you, imagine living with him. Everything in life was a mission. Every dinner, a debriefing. Every mistake, a teachable moment. His mantra? Tough love builds strong kids. Except some of us didn't need boot camp. We just needed a damn hug. My two older brothers, Grant and Liam, took to his version of parenting like ducks to water. Grant went into law enforcement, Liam into business school, and eventually co-founded a startup with Dad's help. They had the same military posture, the same hard jawlines, the same belief that crying was something you did in private, and only if someone died. Dad used to introduce them at barbecues like they were Olympic athletes. My boys, real men, carved from discipline and drive. And then there was me. I was born 6 years after Liam, a surprise no one quite knew what to do with. Mom once confessed that when she told Dad she was pregnant with me, he went silent for a full 5 minutes. I already have 2 kids, he finally said. What do we need another for? He never said it to my face, of course. But he didn't need to. You can tell when you're the one the room wasn't prepared for. Mom, bless her, tried to fill in the gaps. She bought me books, taught me how to bake, drove me to dance classes in between football games and ROTC ceremonies. But even she became muted when Dad was around, like her warmth had a dimmer switch only he controlled. She'd smile and say, "Don't mind your father, Liv. That's just how he is." As if that made it easier to swallow when he'd call my short story awards cute, or my interest in art a hobby, not a future. I stopped showing him my drawings after 7th grade. By the time I hit 18, I developed a quiet superpower, adaptation. I went to college for graphic design, an art degree he scoffed at, on a partial scholarship, supplementing the rest with retail jobs and summer gigs. I never once asked him for help. Not when I was late on rent. Not when I needed a new laptop after mine died, during finals. I figured if he didn't want to be proud of me, the least I could do was make it easy for him to forget I existed. But somewhere deep inside me, some naive, stubborn part, I still believed that if I succeeded enough, if I made something big of myself, I could rewrite the story. I could make him see me. That brings us to this year's reunion. It was held, as always, at my parents' place, this oversized 2-story colonial with white pillars and navy shutters. It was the same house we'd taken from photos in, the same one where I once locked myself in the guest bathroom during my 15th birthday because Dad joked that I'd peaked in middle school. This time, I told myself it would be different. I had news. Big news. Just 2 weeks earlier, my first full-length graphic novel had been picked up by an indie publisher. I'd spent 4 years working on it in stolen hours between freelancing jobs and was told it had a real shot at a wider release if the pre-orders went well. It was the biggest thing I'd ever done. The kind of success I'd convinced myself even Dad couldn't ignore. I even printed out an early copy of the illustrated cover to show him. Stupid, right? Like a grade schooler bringing home a crayon drawing and waiting for it to be pinned to the fridge. But I needed that pin. Just once. I arrived late on purpose. Let the boys soak up the spotlight for a while. I wore a pale green dress that made my skin glow and brought a bottle of wine I couldn't quite afford, hoping the aesthetics might buy me a few seconds of attention before the joke started. It was the usual crowd. Cousins with too many kids. Uncles who still thought calling me artsy-fartsy was hilarious. Aunt Nora, whose Botox had reached critical levels. Everyone had their part to play in the family pageant. And there was Dad, holding court near the grill, beer in one hand, arms slung over Liam's shoulder. His voice boomed like always, even over the backyard speaker playing classic rock. "Grant just got promoted, Detective Moore now," he said proudly, eyes scanning the crowd. "And Liam's company just signed a deal with a major logistics firm. My boys? They don't stop winning." I hovered near the snack table, waiting for some magical moment when he'd notice I existed. When it didn't come, I walked over, heart thudding like I was about to give a TED talk, and tapped his shoulder. "Hey, Dad. Can I steal you for a second? I have something I want to show you." He glanced down at me, just for a second, and then back at Liam. "Can it wait?" he asked, already smiling at someone over my shoulder. "We were just talking numbers." That's when I knew. The talk wouldn't change anything. The book wouldn't change anything. Nothing I did would ever be enough to outshine the sons who fit into the mold he'd carved. Dinner came, the usual barbecue buffet eaten on paper plates around the patio. Dad stood to make his annual toast. I almost didn't listen, convinced I already knew the script. Until he raised his glass and said it. "I'm proud of all my children," he announced, beaming around the table. "Except the loser." It wasn't loud. It wasn't even a shout. But the room went still like a glass dropped on tile. And then everyone laughed. Everyone except me. The laughter wasn't cruel at first. It was the kind people do when they assume it's a joke. Nervous chuckles, sidelong glances, a few, "Oh, Charlie," thrown in like confetti to disguise the discomfort. I even caught my mom forcing a strained smile, the kind that pulled at her face like a rubber band stretched too tight. No one wanted to be the one who admitted what we all knew, he meant it. I didn't say anything. Not at first. I just sat there, frozen, like a doll in a glass case, painted smile, stiff spine. My tongue felt thick in my mouth, as if it had forgotten how to shape words. The air smelled like grilled meat and citronella, but all I could taste was the metallic tang of humiliation. Across the table, Grant kept eating like nothing had happened, casually reaching for another rib. Liam had the decency to look uncomfortable, though he didn't say a word. Mom was staring at her plate like it might offer a trapdoor to disappear through. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to call him out in front of everyone. But instead, I did what I always did. I got up. I stood, slowly and deliberately, like I was trying not to wake a sleeping baby, even though the bomb had already gone off. I left my plate half-eaten and walked through the crowd without a word. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. I suppose they all thought I'd come back eventually, like I always did. Olivia, the quiet one, the reasonable one, the one who took the hit, smiled through it, and showed up again next year. But not this time. I made it as far as the front porch before the sob caught in my throat. I barely had time to pull my car keys from my purse before the first tear slipped down my cheek, hot and fast like it was trying to outrun the others. I didn't even remember unlocking the car. I just remember gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles went white, the engine humming beneath me like a held breath. It was only when I reached the end of the street that my phone started buzzing. The screen lit up with Mom's name. I let it ring. Then Grant. Ignored. Then Liam. Voicemail. I drove for an hour with no direction. Just asphalt and silence, and a growing hollow in my chest. I ended up at a roadside diner I used to visit in college when I needed to think. It hadn't changed. Still smelled like burnt coffee and syrup. I slid into a cracked vinyl booth in the corner and ordered pancakes, even though it was 9 p.m. The waitress didn't ask questions. Bless her. I sat there, staring at the plate, not eating. My hands were trembling. The adrenaline had started to wear off, leaving a nausea that curled low in my stomach. I'd walked out, sure. But now what? My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a text from Liam. Dad was out of line.
Just wanted to say that.
It was something. Not enough, but more than nothing. Then came Mom's message. Please come home. Let's talk before this becomes something permanent. I stared at that one for a while.
Permanent.
Like I hadn't been carrying permanence on my back for years. Like this one moment had changed something, when really it had just exposed what had always been true. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my email. The publisher had sent the finalized mock-up of my book cover earlier that day. I clicked it open, expecting to feel pride, maybe even relief. But all I felt was empty. Like the one person I still wanted to show it to had smashed the frame before I even got a chance to hold it up. And then, without thinking, I did something I'd never done before. I opened Facebook. I clicked on Create Post. And I wrote, "My dad made a toast tonight at our family reunion. He raised his glass and said, 'I'm proud of all my children, except the loser.' I was the only daughter at the table." I smiled, stood up, and walked away. I've spent 29 years trying to be someone he'd be proud of. Built a career on my own, wrote a graphic novel that's getting published next month, paid every bill without help, and tried to make myself small enough to fit into the picture he wanted. Tonight, I realized I don't want to be in that picture anymore. If you're someone who's spent your whole life trying to earn love that was supposed to be unconditional, let me just say, walking away doesn't mean you're weak. Sometimes it means you're finally strong enough. My name is Olivia Moore. I'm not a loser. I'm just done playing a rigged game.
I stared at the post for a long time.
Then I hit share. Within an hour, it had 30 likes. Comments started trickling in. Friends from college. Old coworkers. Even my high school English teacher. "You're not alone, Liv. Thank you for this. I'm so sorry. This hit me right in the heart. You're amazing. Don't ever forget that." I wasn't sure what I was expecting. Pity, maybe. Judgment. But instead, I got validation. From strangers. From people who'd never even met my father, but knew exactly the kind of wound I was carrying. My hands stopped shaking. I ate half a pancake. That night, I checked into a motel outside the city. One of those old roadside ones with a flickering sign and a key instead of a card. It was dingy but clean, and the silence felt like a balm on my bruised spirit. I lay on the stiff mattress, staring at the popcorn ceiling, trying to remember the first time I felt like a disappointment. I couldn't. It went back too far. It was baked into my foundation. But I also remembered the first time I made someone cry with one of my illustrations. I was 15. It was a drawing of a woman holding a cracked mirror to her face, and my art teacher had looked at it for a long time before saying, "You have something, Olivia. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." That memory became my anchor that night. I fell asleep with my phone buzzing beside me, more notifications pouring in. But I didn't answer any of them. For the first time in years, I was finally listening to myself. Morning hit me with the kind of dull ache you only get after a night of emotional whiplash. I woke up tangled in motel sheets that smelled faintly of bleach and stale air conditioning, my phone still buzzing with messages I hadn't touched. My inbox had exploded overnight. My Facebook post, the one I had typed out in a fog of hurt and clarity, had gone semi-viral. There were over 300 likes now, 120 comments, dozens of shares. And not just from people I knew, total strangers had weighed in, telling me about their own stories, their own cold fathers, their own moments of walking away. It was surreal and oddly grounding. Because for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like I was crazy, or overly sensitive, or the difficult one. I felt heard. After brushing my teeth with a complimentary motel toothbrush and sipping bad lobby coffee, I finally opened the unread texts. I scrolled past Grant's name, ignored Liam's brief apology again, then landed on a string of messages from my mom. "Olivia, can we please talk?" I didn't know he was going to say that. I thought it was a joke. "I'm sorry. Your father says he didn't mean it that way. He says you're overreacting." That last one was a punch to the gut. Overreacting. The word he'd used 100 times before to explain why I was always too much. Why I was the one who needed to calm down, lighten up, stop taking things so personally. the old tune playing on a loop. I closed the messages. I didn't know where I was headed, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going home. Instead, I drove. It was a cool, gray morning, and the highway stretched like an open vein through the countryside. With nowhere specific in mind, I headed toward the small town where I went to college. It had been 6 years since I last saw that campus, but something about going back felt like returning to a version of myself I had once believed in. The one before I started trying to prove anything. The bookstore was still there. So was the cafe, with the wobbly tables and mismatched mugs. I parked near the park where I'd once spent an entire weekend sketching the same statue from different angles, trying to get the shadows just right. I sat on a bench near the fountain and pulled the mock-up of my graphic novel cover from my bag. It was still there, printed on thick matte paper, curled slightly at the edges. My name was in bold letters at the bottom, written and illustrated by Olivia Moore. I traced the letters with my thumb, like they belonged to someone else. Then I heard a voice behind me.
Liv.
I turned, startled, and there he was, Tyler Morgan, my college boyfriend. We hadn't spoken in years. Not since he moved to Portland to pursue a PhD in environmental policy. We'd ended things on good terms, but life got busy, and we lost touch. Yet somehow, in a town of a few thousand, the universe dropped him into my path. He smiled like he wasn't surprised to see me at all. I thought that was you. You haven't changed a bit. I smiled. Despite everything. That's debatable. We ended up grabbing coffee. The cafe still had the same mismatched mugs. He asked how I'd been, and instead of giving the polished elevator pitch I usually offered people, I told the truth. I told him about the reunion, about the toast, about the post that blew up, about the motel and the pancakes and the bone-deep feeling of being done. And he listened. Really listened. Not once did he say I was being dramatic, or ask if I'd misunderstood, or try to reframe the story in a way that made it more palatable. He just said, "That was cruel. I'm sorry you had to hear that." Then he added, "I'm proud of you. Not that it should matter what anyone thinks, but in case you forgot, you've always been incredible, even when you didn't see it." I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until the tears welled up in my eyes. We talked for hours about art and purpose, and how healing sometimes looks like driving away from the only place you've ever called home. He told me about his research, his failed startup, his sister who had just come out, and how their dad didn't take it well. Pain, it seemed, was not unique, but the way we carried it was. Before we parted ways, he asked if he could buy a copy of my book when it came out. "Are you kidding?" I said. "I'll send you a signed one." He grinned. "I'll hold you to that." Driving away, I felt lighter. Not healed. Not whole. But like I could breathe again. Back at the motel, I finally called Mom. She answered on the first ring. Her voice was small, like she'd been crying. "Olivia," she said. "Thank you for calling." We sat in silence for a beat. Did he mean it? I asked quietly. Another pause. "He's stubborn," she said carefully, "and prideful. And he's angry that you posted about it." I laughed, bitter. "Of course he is. But I think," she continued, "it's because deep down, he knows he crossed a line. And maybe he doesn't know how to come back from that." "He doesn't want to," I said. "He never has. Not really." "I know," she whispered. "I should have stopped him.
I should have said something."
But I froze. "You always freeze," I replied. Not cruelly. Just honestly. "I know," she said again. "And I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was something. The smallest stone laid at the foundation of a possible bridge." "Are you coming home?" she asked finally. I thought about the house, the porch, the koi pond, the echo of his voice telling everyone I was a loser. "No," I said. "Not right now." She didn't argue. Okay. After we hung up, I packed my things. The motel had been a liminal space, a safe pause between one life and the next. But I was ready to move forward now. I drove to a friend's apartment in Columbus who'd offered her couch until I figured things out. And I realized I wasn't lost. I was just free. If you had told me a week ago that I'd be living out of a duffel bag on my friend Dana's pull-out couch in a high-rise apartment in Columbus, I would have laughed.
Or cried.
Probably both. But here I was. And somehow, it didn't feel like failure. Dana had been my roommate freshman year before she switched majors and moved into a dorm closer to the architecture building. We kept in touch over the years, occasional texts, birthday messages, a few meetups when we happened to be in the same city. When she saw my Facebook post, she didn't just comment. She called. And when I picked up, the first thing she said was, "Come stay with me. I've got space, coffee, and a couch that's technically a queen-size bed. You're not doing this alone." I arrived the next evening, hugged her tighter than I had anyone in months, and sank into the unfamiliar safety of being with someone who expected nothing from me. No performances. No apologies. No pretending. "You're not a loser," she said, almost immediately, as we sat in her kitchen eating takeout Thai from paper cartons. "Your dad's just a relic. A leftover from a time when men thought fatherhood meant issuing ultimatums and measuring love in discipline." I didn't respond right away, just chewed slowly, staring out her window at the skyline. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. "Or ignore it completely and watch Netflix until our eyes bleed?" That question, so simple, so respectful, unlocked something in me. "I think I do want to talk," I said. "But I don't even know where to start." She nodded. "Start with now." So, I told her about the reunion, about the toast, about how it was the culmination of 30 years of never being enough. I didn't realize how badly I needed to spill it until the words started pouring out. The stories I usually kept locked behind polite nods and practiced smiles surfaced in a torrent. How Dad made fun of my hair when I dyed it blue in high school. How he called my studio apartment a closet with plumbing. How he once told me, when I was 16, that I needed to toughen up or get left behind. Dana didn't interrupt. She just refilled my wine glass and listened. "He's never once told me he's proud of me," I said, my voice cracking. "Not when I won the state art competition. Not when I got my first freelance client. Not even when I got this book deal. It's like, I'm invisible to him unless he wants to use me as a punchline." Dana leaned forward, her eyes sharp with empathy. "Liv," she said, "some parents are broken in ways their kids can't fix. And it doesn't matter how high you climb or how much you give, they'll always withhold the one thing you need most. Not because you're not worthy of it, but because they don't know how to give it." I blinked fast, trying to keep the tears in. But they came anyway. Soft, silent, and unstoppable. She hugged me, tight and warm, and whispered, "You're not crazy. You're just waking up." That night, I fell asleep on her couch with a blanket tucked under my chin and a weight in my chest that felt slightly, almost imperceptibly, lighter. The next few days were quiet, but filled with clarity. I started working on a new project, not for a client, not for a deadline, just for me. A personal comic strip about a girl named Echo who wakes up in a world where her voice is physically invisible. People speak over her, through her, around her. The only time she's visible is when she yells. When she shouts so loud that her voice bends reality. I didn't mean for it to be autobiographical, but yeah, it was. Meanwhile, messages from my family kept trickling in. Liam sent another text. Not defending what he said, but maybe we can talk soon. Just you and me. Grant predictably sent nothing. And Mom, she tried. She sent a photo of my childhood bedroom, untouched except for the bouquet of flowers she'd placed on the desk. "Thinking of you," the message read. I didn't know what to make of that. But I didn't delete it either. Then, 4 days after the reunion, my dad finally reached out. A voice message. Just seeing his name on my screen made my stomach knot. I considered deleting it without listening. But something inside me, morbid curiosity, maybe, made me press play. His voice came through flat, gruff, and carefully controlled. "Olivia, it's your father. Your mother says you're staying with a friend. That's fine. I just want to say, I didn't mean for things to blow up like that. You took it out of context. It was a joke. Everyone knew it. A joke. Of course." He continued. "You've always been sensitive. You know that. And I've always been hard on you because I wanted you to push yourself. That's how people succeed. That's how your brothers succeeded. I wasn't trying to hurt you, but if I did, I guess I apologize. Anyway, call your mother.
Click.
I stared at the wall for a long time after that. I wanted to feel something.
Rage.
Sadness. Relief. But all I felt was tired. Tired of decoding. Tired of minimizing. Tired of trying to translate his barbed wire affection into anything resembling love. I didn't respond. Instead, I kept drawing. And the comic about Echo? I posted the first strip online that night. It got shared by a couple of indie art pages. Then a mental health advocate. Then a parenting blog. Within 2 days, it had gone viral, bigger than the Facebook post. Bigger than I could have imagined. Messages poured in again. Not just likes this time, but stories. Real, raw, heartbreaking stories from people who saw themselves in Echo's silent pain. People who'd been dismissed, overlooked, labeled too emotional or too weak. People who had shouted until their throats bled and still weren't heard. And now, they were hearing Echo, which meant, in a way, they were hearing me. One message stuck out. It was from a woman named Beth, a therapist and trauma survivor. This is the first time I've seen my childhood in a comic strip. Thank you. Your voice matters. You're not invisible. I reread it 3 times. Then I cried again.
Not out of pain this time.
But out of recognition. Maybe I couldn't change my dad. Maybe I couldn't make him proud. But I was finally starting to make myself proud. The Monday after Echo went viral, I got an email from a woman named Camila Hernandez, a literary agent from a boutique firm in Brooklyn. The subject line read, "Representation Inquiry. Echo speaks loudly." For a split second, I thought it was spam. I even hovered over the delete button. But then I opened it. Dear Olivia, I came across your comic series Echo on Instagram this weekend and couldn't stop thinking about it. The emotional resonance, the vulnerability. It's rare to find something that balances sharp visual storytelling with such raw honesty. I represent a number of artists and writers whose work speaks to personal transformation and identity. If you're interested, I'd love to set up a call and discuss the possibility of representing you. Warmly, Camila Hernandez. Trident North Literary Group. I sat frozen, staring at the message. Then I read it again. And again.
Me.
A girl who used to doodle on napkins at family dinners because no one would listen when she spoke. Me, who had to sneak in hours of drawing after everyone else had gone to sleep because art wasn't a real job. Me, the invisible middle child, now with an agent asking to represent her. When I told Dana, she practically screamed, "Are you kidding me? Camila Hernandez is legit. She represents 2 of my favorite memoirists. Should I even consider this?" I asked. I mean, what if this is just a flash in the pan kind of thing? She looked at me with narrowed eyes. Liv, this is the moment you've worked your whole life for. You're not faking it. You're arriving. We scheduled a call for Wednesday morning. I barely slept the night before. Camila was everything I hoped she'd be. Warm, intelligent, disarming in the best way. She didn't launch into a pitch. She asked questions. Real ones. About Echo, about me, about the space I was carving out for myself in the world. "What are you hoping to do with this story?" she asked. And for once, I didn't say, "I don't know." "I want to expand it," I told her. Echo's story is only beginning. I want her to find her voice. To scream, yes, but then to speak. With power. And softness. And rage. All of it. I want her to find a way to belong to herself. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I love that," she said. That's exactly what readers are starving for right now. Would you be open to pitching it as a full-length graphic novel series? Maybe even an illustrated memoir hybrid? It felt like jumping off a cliff. Yes, I said. Absolutely yes. By the time we ended the call, I had a contract to review, a timeline for submissions, and a list of potential publishers she already had in mind. And I sat on Dana's couch for a full 10 minutes afterward, holding my face in my hands, trying to process the sheer whiplash of it all. Because here's the part no one tells you. When your life changes for the better, it's still terrifying. It doesn't erase the trauma. It doesn't instantly rewrite the narrative. It just adds a new chapter, a brighter one. But the shadows don't vanish right away. That night, as I was finishing a panel for Echo, her whisper finally visible to herself, even if no one else could see it, I got another message. From my mom. This time, it wasn't a plea or a guilt trip. It was a photo. The image showed the living room back home, empty but lit by soft afternoon light. On the coffee table was my graphic novel mock-up, and beside it a note written in Mom's neat cursive. Your father hasn't touched this since you left, but he hasn't thrown it away either. I stared at the photo for a long time. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even a gesture of change, but it was something. And somehow, that something hurt more than the silence. Because it meant he knew. He'd seen. And he still couldn't say the words. The next day, I did something I hadn't done since I was 16. I drew my dad. Not as he was, but as Echo saw him. A towering, faceless figure, all sharp corners and noise, speaking in thunderclouds that filled the frame. Echo stood below him, small but solid, holding a mirror that reflected not his face, but her own. I titled the panel Recognition, and I posted it. It went viral in less than 12 hours. Even more messages came in now. People who had grown up with fathers like mine.
People who had stopped trying.
People who were just beginning to find their own Echo. Among the flood of comments, one stood out. From an anonymous user named truthseeker_1980. Sometimes the people who break us never say sorry. But that doesn't mean we're not allowed to heal. Thank you for giving us a language for our silence. I screenshotted it and saved it to my phone. Because that was it, wasn't it? The entire purpose. I wasn't just telling a story anymore. I was building a language for people like me, those who had spent years explaining away their pain because it didn't come in bruises or slammed doors. It came in silences, in lowered eyes, in withheld praise and surgically timed insults disguised as jokes. Later that week, I received an invitation from a women's leadership conference in Chicago. They'd seen Echo, read my Facebook post, and wanted me to speak on art, healing, and generational disconnection. I laughed when I read it.
Me?
A speaker? But Dana nudged me. Why not? It's your story. Own it.
I said yes.
2 weeks later, I stood on a stage in front of 200 women, some young, some old, some with tears already in their eyes before I said a word. I talked about Echo. I talked about the reunion. I talked about how walking away from a toxic parent is not an act of cruelty, it's an act of survival. And afterward, a woman came up to me and whispered, I haven't spoken to my father in 7 years. And I felt guilty every single day. Until now. It was the most powerful moment of my life. Later that night, back in my hotel room, I got another text. This one was from Liam. He's reading the comic now. The one with the mirror. He hasn't said anything, but he stared at it for a long time. Just thought you should know. I didn't know what to feel, or what to say. So I said nothing. Instead, I closed my eyes, breathed deep, and whispered to myself, You're not invisible anymore. 2 months had passed since the reunion when the letter arrived. It came in a plain white envelope, no return address, just my name in the careful, square handwriting I recognized instantly. My father's. I found it wedged between a utility bill and a flyer for a local dentist when I checked Dana's mailbox that morning. My fingers froze when I saw it. I stood there for what felt like minutes, the wind brushing loose strands of hair across my face as I stared at my name, Olivia Moore, written by the same man who once scrawled grocery lists in capital letters and signed birthday cards with just, Dad. It was surreal, holding this unexpected artifact from a man who couldn't say, I'm sorry, to my face. I didn't open it right away. I tucked it into the back pocket of my jeans and carried it around all day. To the coffee shop where I worked remotely on storyboards. To the park, where I sat with Dana during her lunch break. Even to the grocery store, where I stood in front of the cereal aisle, running my fingers along the crease of the envelope, imagining what he might have written. Back at the apartment, I sat at the kitchen counter, took a deep breath, and slid a butter knife under the flap. The letter was just one page, typed. Black ink on white paper, single-spaced, no salutation. No, dear Olivia. Not even Liv. I suppose this is what you wanted. Everyone's talking about you now. Your comics, your posts, your big exit from the family dinner. Even people at my gym have asked me if I'm the father of that girl on Instagram. I stopped reading. My stomach twisted. I hadn't expected warmth, but I hadn't braced for this, either. Still, I kept going. I never understood you. Not when you were 5 and cried because your crayon broke. Not when you were 15 and dyed your hair blue. And not now, when you've decided to turn our family into a public exhibition. You always wanted attention. Now you've got it. But I did love you. In my own way. I provided. I pushed. I tried to make you strong because the world doesn't care about your feelings, Olivia. And I didn't want you to crumble when life got hard. I know you think I failed you. Maybe I did. But you're not blameless either. You never tried to see me as anything other than the villain. You wanted a different kind of father, and when I didn't become him, you punished me for it. I hope you find peace in whatever life you build now. Just don't expect me to clap for every step you take away from this family.
Dad.
I read it twice, then a third time. Each pass-through scraped something raw. There was no apology, no real ownership, just a list of rationalizations wrapped in a bitter bow. A final performance of the man he'd always been, unable to admit his failures unless he could share the blame. I folded the letter, slipped it back into the envelope, and tucked it into the drawer under the sink. Not in the trash, not on the fridge, just somewhere it could exist without holding weight. That night, I added a new panel to Echo's story. It showed Echo standing at the edge of a forest. Behind her were shadows, blurred figures that looked like family, hands outstretched, mouths open. Their voices were written in looping, messy lines. You're the problem. You made this mess. We did our best. In the next frame, Echo turned away, holding a tiny candle cupped in her palms. A small flame, but hers. The caption read, "Sometimes the silence after the truth is still better than the noise before it." I posted it just after midnight, and by morning, it had more comments than any panel yet. One message stood out. A woman named Corinne wrote, "Thank you for this. I got a letter like that from my mother once. She called it closure. I called it confirmation. Some people don't change, and that's the closure." That word, confirmation, lingered in my chest for days. It was exactly that. My father's letter hadn't reopened wounds. It had cemented the truth I'd finally accepted. He wouldn't change. Not because he was incapable of love, but because he only knew how to love on his own terms. And I no longer wanted to shrink myself to fit within those limits. The world outside my father's approval kept growing. Camilla had officially signed me. She was in talks with 3 publishers, all eager to acquire the Echo series. One wanted a 5-book arc. Another proposed an animated short. It felt surreal in the kind of way that had you questioning whether you deserved it. I'd never known what it felt like to win without needing someone else to see it first. And then, quietly, something else happened. My mom sent a voice memo. It came late one night. I was brushing my teeth when the alert pinged, and I played it on speaker, not expecting much. "Liv, I read your latest panel, the one with the forest. I showed it to your Aunt Marlene, and we both cried. Not because it was sad, but because it was brave. I see so much of myself in Echo, and it terrifies me to realize how much I've accepted as normal. I think I taught you to endure, when what you needed was protection. I'm sorry I didn't know better back then. But I want to now. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. No defenses. Just me." I sat down on the edge of the bathtub, toothbrush still in hand, my knees suddenly weak. This was different. This was not a performance. This was not a defense. It was an offering. I didn't respond right away. I let it sit for a few days. Let it soak into the wounds still healing in quiet places. But eventually I texted her back. "Thank you. That means more than you know. I'd like to talk. Soon. The door wasn't flung wide open. But it wasn't locked anymore either. Weeks passed. The season shifted. I signed the publishing deal with a mid-sized house, known for championing personal, poignant stories. Echo was going to become a full series. Dana took me out for drinks the night I signed. To Echo, she toasted. And to Liv, who learned how to scream and then chose to speak. I grinned, my heart full in a way I hadn't felt since I was a kid drawing by flashlight under the covers. At the end of the night, when we got home a little tipsy and breathless with laughter, I saw it again. My dad's envelope still tucked in the drawer. I took it out, opened it, lit a match, and watched it burn in Dana's kitchen sink. No rage, no tears, just release. The first printed copy of Echo arrived on a Tuesday morning. It came in a slim cardboard box marked, "Advance Reader Copy, Not for Sale." I remember how my fingers trembled as I cut through the tape, how I hesitated before pulling the lid back, as if the reality of holding something I created would somehow dissolve the magic. But it didn't. It was real. There it was, Echo, Volume 1, staring back at me with a matte finish and my name printed beneath the title in clean serif font, written and illustrated by Olivia Moore. The cover showed Echo standing in a rainstorm, hands cupped around a candle that refused to go out. I touched the raised title with the tips of my fingers, a lump in my throat rising so fast I had to sit down on the edge of Dana's couch. This book, this story, had started as a coping mechanism. A sketchpad rebellion against decades of not being heard. Now it was a published work. Now it would live in other people's hands, on their shelves, in their backpacks. Echo, who had once been just a fragment of my pain, was now something whole, something strong. I thought about sending a photo of it to my mom. Then I didn't. Some things you hold close for a little longer before you share them. But as if the universe had heard my thoughts, my phone buzzed with a message from her. I saw the pre-order link on Facebook. I ordered 5. One for me, one for Aunt Marlene, one for the church library, and 2 extras just in case. "I'm so proud of you, Liv." There it was. The phrase I'd craved all my life. Not from the man who had withheld it like a currency, but from the woman who had once been too afraid to speak it aloud. "I'm so proud of you." It landed in my chest like a warm weight, grounding me. This was different from the recognition that had poured in from strangers online. This was the first brick in something that might still become a bridge. Maybe not to my old family life, but to a new relationship, based on truth. That same day, Camilla called with an update. "The publisher wants to set up a launch event," she said. "Something intimate but impactful. A gallery-style presentation, maybe a reading, some original panels framed on the walls. You'd speak for a few minutes, sign copies."
How do you feel about that?
Like I was going to throw up, I thought. But out loud I said, excited, terrified, both. Camilla laughed.
Good.
That means it matters. She was right. It mattered. And so, 3 weeks later, I found myself standing in a converted warehouse in Brooklyn, where the publisher had set up a minimalist, chic launch space that made me feel like I'd accidentally wandered into someone else's life. Original art from Echo was mounted on easels and displayed under spotlights. Small groups of guests wandered through the gallery: readers, editors, illustrators, strangers who had followed the story since that first Instagram post. And then I saw her, my mom, standing near the back, dressed in a navy cardigan and a floral scarf I remembered from childhood. Her hands clutched a copy of Echo so tightly the cover had started to crumple. But her eyes, those soft, familiar eyes, met mine across the room with something I couldn't quite name. Not regret. Not sorrow. Something quieter.
Hope. We didn't speak right away.
She watched as I stepped up to the mic, cleared my throat, and introduced the book. "This story," I said, voice steadier than I expected, "began as a way to cope with silence. The kind that fills the space when you're surrounded by people who talk, but never listen. The kind that erases you, slowly, without ever raising its voice." A pause. I didn't expect Echo to be seen. I didn't think anyone would relate to a girl who could scream and still go unheard. But then people did. People saw her. And in seeing her, they saw themselves. I glanced at my mom. She was crying. Quietly. The way she did everything. I think the greatest lie we're told is that family means loyalty above all else, I continued. But I've learned that family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who sees you, truly sees you, and still chooses to stand beside you. There was a silence afterward, thick and reverent. And then applause. Loud, heartfelt, bone deep. Later, my mom approached slowly, like she was afraid I might bolt. I was nervous about coming, she admitted. I figured. But I had to see it. I had to see you. I've been reading the comic. Every panel. And Liv, her voice cracked. I had no idea. Not really. I thought you were strong enough. I thought ignoring it made you stronger. I shook my head. It made me quieter. That's not the same thing. She nodded, tears streaming freely now. I'm sorry, she whispered. For all the years, I chose peace over truth. I took her hand. I'm not asking for a different past, I said. I just want an honest future. I want that too. And maybe that's where it began. The real healing. Not in apologies, but in honesty. That night, after the event, Dana and I sat in the loft I was now subletting. Yes, I'd finally moved out of her apartment, and toasted with cheap champagne and leftover charcuterie. To Echo, she said. To me, I corrected. She grinned.
To you.
The next morning, I woke up to a voicemail. From Liam. Hey, Liv. I've been thinking about what you said about Dad, about the family. And I just want you to know, you weren't wrong. I used to think you were being dramatic. Now I think you were just being honest. And maybe the rest of us were too afraid to follow you. He paused. He's not changing. You know that. But I think we can. I think I can. And if there's a way forward where we're still in each other's lives, I'd like to try. I saved the message. Not because I was ready to respond, but because it felt good to hear someone finally admit the truth. There were no perfect endings here. My father didn't show up at the launch. He didn't send flowers. He didn't even post a passive-aggressive status online, though I checked out of old habit. But his absence didn't feel like a hole anymore. It felt like space. Space I could fill with my art, my truth, my people.
People who saw me.
People who stayed. People like Dana, who left a sticky note on my fridge the next morning. Don't forget, you are your own loudest voice now. Never let anyone mute you again. And Echo? She was just getting started. 3 months after the launch of Echo, I received an invitation that nearly made me spill coffee on my sketchpad. It was from the National Arts Collective, an interdisciplinary symposium in Chicago known for highlighting emerging voices in storytelling, visual arts, and social impact. They wanted to feature Echo in their keynote gallery and invited me to speak on a panel titled Art as Reclamation, Healing Through Narrative. I read the email 3 times, blinking at the signature like it might vanish. Curated by Elise Monroe, Program Director, NAC. I couldn't help laughing. Quietly at first, then louder, until Dana popped her head into my room. Everything okay in here? She asked, her mouth curving into a smirk. They want me to speak, I said, turning my laptop toward her. At an actual conference. Like, professionally. Dana squinted, reading. Then grinned. Girl, you're the conference. I accepted the invitation later that day, trying to sound casual in my reply. But inside, I was buzzing. Not just because I was excited, but because this was the first invitation I'd ever received that didn't come with expectations to play nice, be palatable, or shrink. They wanted my voice. Exactly as it was. And for the first time in my life, I knew what I wanted to say. The conference took place in late October, just as Chicago began trading its late summer charm for a crisp bite in the air. I arrived 2 days early, my portfolio in tow, along with Dana, who insisted on coming as my unofficial assistant/cheerleader. She booked the hotel, organized my panels, even picked my outfit for the keynote, a charcoal gray jumpsuit with subtle gold jewelry. Strong. Minimal. Intimidating, but like in a good way, she said. On the morning of the event, I walked into the gallery hall and stopped cold. There, displayed on freestanding panels under soft lights, were massive prints of my work. Echo, mid-scream. Echo, walking alone through a maze of faceless figures. Echo, holding a letter made of fire. My panels, pages born from pain and scribbled out between tears, now stood on display, larger than life, like monuments to the journey I had taken. Attendees strolled past, headphones plugged into guided audio, stopping to read, to cry, to snap pictures. A woman stood in front of the panel I had titled The Inheritance. It was one of my most vulnerable pieces, Echo staring into a cracked mirror where her father's silhouette hovered behind her, distorted and towering. The woman wiped a tear away and whispered to her friend, "That's exactly how mine felt. Like a shadow I never asked for." I backed away quietly, not wanting to interrupt. But in my chest, something unfurled. Not pride exactly, something quieter. Validation, maybe. Confirmation that what I thought was just my pain had become a mirror for others, too. That evening, the panel began. I shared the stage with two other artists, a poet who had survived domestic abuse and a sculptor who lost his twin brother to addiction. We each took turns discussing how our work wasn't born from ambition, but from necessity, from grief, from silence that had festered too long. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the microphone, palms damp but steady. I didn't set out to make something revolutionary, I began. I just needed to tell the truth. A quiet truth. The kind that festers in rooms where love is conditional. Where approval comes with strings. Where fathers can give you everything but kindness and call it enough. Heads nodded in the audience. One woman covered her mouth. I used to think healing looked like reconciliation, I continued. Like sitting across from someone who hurt you and hearing the words, "I'm sorry." But now I think healing is realizing you don't need that to move forward. Healing is speaking the truth even when no one claps. Healing is drawing the wound and letting others see themselves in it. A silence followed, heavy, reverent. And then applause. Not the polite kind, but the visceral kind. The kind that rose from somewhere honest. After the panel, a line formed. Readers who wanted to thank me. Survivors who wanted to share their stories. One woman hugged me and whispered, "Your comic made me leave my mother's house. I don't know where I'm going yet, but I know I'm not crazy." Later that night, I returned to my hotel, exhausted but full. Dana handed me a glass of champagne and a slice of leftover room service cake. "To the woman who helped us all find our inner echo," she said. I smiled. To not being quiet anymore. Back in Columbus a week later, I received a letter from my father.
A real one this time.
Handwritten. 2 pages. It sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I opened it. The handwriting was rough, the ink slightly smudged in places. I read it slowly. "Olivia, I've read your book. All of it. And before you wonder, yes, I was angry at first. Furious, really. That you aired our family business. That you made me into some kind of monster. But then I read it again. And again. And the truth is, I saw myself in it. And I didn't like what I saw. I don't know how to be the man you needed me to be. I was raised by someone even colder than me, and I thought I was doing better by being present, even if I was hard. But I see now that I confused presence with parenting. I can't undo what I did.
Or didn't do. But I want to try.
Not to make up for it. That's impossible. But to show up differently. If you're willing. P.S. I bought a copy of Echo for your Aunt Janice. She says she cried for an hour after reading it. Proud doesn't begin to cover it.
Dad.
I put the letter down. And I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant either. I just felt quiet. Not silenced. But still. Like standing at the edge of a forest that had once terrified me, and seeing that maybe, just maybe, the path through was starting to clear. That weekend, I drew a new panel. Echo, older now.
Taller.
Standing on a hill, overlooking the world she once feared. Behind her, the shadows still lingered, faint but no longer threatening. She carried no torch this time, no shield, just a pen in her hand. The caption read, "Healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's just continuing. Quietly."
Boldly.
Anyway, I never thought I'd say this, but 3 weeks after my dad's letter arrived, I agreed to see him. It wasn't out of obligation, or guilt, or some fairy tale hope that a single meeting could fix decades of damage. It was curiosity, really, a cautious willingness to look him in the eye and see what, if anything, had shifted behind that familiar granite mask. We met at a neutral location, a small coffee shop halfway between Columbus and my hometown. Public, quiet, safe. Dana offered to come with me, to wait outside in case I needed an escape plan. But I told her no. This one had to be mine. He was already there when I arrived, sitting stiffly in the corner booth, hands folded neatly on the table like he was being interviewed. He wore a navy pullover and jeans, casual for him, but still unmistakably dad. Stoic.
Upright.
As if posture alone could compensate for everything left unsaid. I approached slowly. My heart wasn't pounding. It was humming, steady and alert. Like it understood this wasn't a reunion. It was a reckoning. He stood when he saw me, uncertain whether to smile. I offered a nod, sat down, and ordered chamomile tea when the waitress came by. He ordered black coffee. No sugar. Just like always. Silence hovered for a few seconds, but I didn't fill it. I let him go first. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said finally. "I wasn't sure I would either." He looked down at his coffee, then back at me. "You look good.
Healthy.
You've always had your mother's skin." I didn't respond. I wasn't here for compliments. He cleared his throat, like he was starting an address. "I've read the book twice now." I raised an eyebrow. "That's 2 more times than you ever read my sketchbooks growing up." He winced slightly. "I deserve that." I waited. I didn't know it would hit me like it did," he said. "Seeing it in black and white. The way Echo shrinks herself, then screams to be seen, it's..." He shook his head. "I thought you were exaggerating. Until I realized how many things you left out. That caught me off guard." I nodded slowly. "There are things I didn't include. Not because I forgot, but because I didn't need to document every wound to prove they existed." He sat back, exhaling through his nose. "I didn't think I'd raise someone with that much fire." "You didn't," I said quietly. "That fire came from what you refused to give me." That landed like a gavel. He nodded. "I always thought," he said, "that parenting was about making kids ready for the world.
Tough. Sharp.
Unshakable." "You didn't make me unshakable," I replied. "You made me afraid. Of trying. Of failing. Of never being enough. I didn't grow strong because of you. I grew strong in spite of you." He stared at me, something unreadable in his eyes. I couldn't tell if it was shame, or just surprise that I wasn't pulling punches. "And yet you came," he said finally. "So there's still something here." "I came for me," I said. "Not you. I came because I needed to stop carrying this idea that closure depends on your apology." He looked stunned for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I don't know how to undo it," he said. "Any of it." "You don't," I said. "You can't. But maybe you can start by not pretending it didn't happen." He opened his mouth, then closed it. He nodded again. "Your mother, she's proud of you, you know," he said. "She always has been. She didn't know how to say it in front of me." "I know," I said. "I've talked to her." That seemed to please him, and I hated how much he needed that approval from me now. The irony. "So, what now?" he asked. I shrugged. "That's up to me." He didn't argue. Didn't ask to be part of it. For once, he just accepted what I said. After another moment of silence, I stood. "Thanks for the tea," I said. He looked like he might reach for me, but didn't. "Liv," he said quietly, "I am proud of you, even if I don't know how to show it." I nodded once. "Then you've got something to work on."
And I left.
Outside, the sun had started to break through the clouds, streaking the sidewalk with gold. Dana was waiting in her car across the street, watching. When I slid into the passenger seat, she looked at me expectantly. Well, I let out a breath.
He's not a changed man.
But I think he's finally realized I'm not waiting for him to be. She nodded. That's enough.
And it was.
2 weeks later, Echo officially hit bookstores. The release was quiet, no flashy campaign or billboard ads, but the online response was anything but. Thousands of readers had already followed her journey online, and now they were holding her in their hands. Bookstores tagged me in their displays. Teachers emailed me, asking if they could use the graphic novel in their curriculum on identity and emotional literacy. One woman sent a photo of her daughter dressed as Echo for Halloween, complete with a candle and mirror. I cried when I saw it. At the launch party, this time hosted at a small independent bookstore in Columbus, I stood behind a table, signing copy after copy. People lined up around the building. Some brought tissues. Others brought thank you notes. A few just hugged me silently, and I let them. It wasn't just about Echo anymore. It was about what she had become, a permission slip for others to be seen. As the party wound down, I gave Dana the last signed copy of the night. To Dana, I wrote, who saw me when I couldn't even draw myself whole. She looked at it, eyes glassy, and smiled. Took you long enough. A few days later, I sat in my studio, yes, my studio now, a modest space I rented downtown, and looked at the blank page of my next sketchpad. Echo's story wasn't over. But now it was changing. She didn't need to scream anymore. She was learning to speak. And even more terrifying, she was learning to be quiet without disappearing. I began to sketch the first panel. Echo at a dinner table, not the dinner table, but one she built herself. No shadows behind her, just soft light. A group of people who looked like friends found family. They were laughing, and she was smiling,
Really smiling.
not because she was trying to be seen, but because she finally was. The caption read, "Sometimes, we build the home we never had from pieces we were once told weren't enough." And as I shaded in the last corner, my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. "I just reread the book. Again. I think I finally understand what you were trying to tell us all along. You were never the quiet one. We just weren't listening." For once, I didn't reply right away. I sat with her words. Let them echo. The first Thanksgiving after Echo's release marked a turning point. Not in the dramatic, movie-ending way, but in the quiet shifts, the way a sunrise can change the whole feel of a room without making a sound. That year, for the first time in my adult life, I didn't go home. Instead, I hosted. In a modest walk-up apartment above a bookstore in Columbus, with windows that rattled when the wind blew too hard and a kitchen too small to fit more than 3 people at once, I laid out folding chairs and mismatched plates, lit candles that smelled like cinnamon and old comfort, and cooked a dinner that was both imperfect and deeply mine. Dana came early, of course. She helped set the table, taste the mashed potatoes, more salt. Always more salt. And coordinate the playlist, an eclectic mix of soft jazz, acoustic covers, and a few guilty pleasure pop songs. Liam showed up next, to my surprise. He'd texted the week before asking if he could visit, just for a few hours. He was traveling solo, he said. Rebecca and the kids were with her parents. I hesitated, but something inside me said yes. Not because I trusted him completely, but because I was no longer afraid of what his presence might do to me. When he walked in, he looked different, softer, like someone who'd stopped pretending to have all the answers. He brought wine and a pie from a bakery downtown and hugged me with an awkward kind of sincerity. "Thanks for letting me come," he said. "I didn't want to be anywhere else."
We didn't talk about Dad.
We didn't need to. We talked about his daughter's obsession with dinosaurs, about the house they were renovating, about the podcast he was launching on small business finance. He even asked about my next book with genuine interest. I told him I was working on a story that had nothing to do with trauma. A magical realism tale about a girl who collects people's regrets in jars. His eyes lit up. "You've got something rare, Liv," he said. "I think I always knew. I just wasn't brave enough to say it." Later, as we cleaned dishes, he said, "I read Echo cover to cover the night it came out. And I saw myself in it. Not in a good way." I looked at him carefully. "What do you mean?" I mean, I was part of the silence. Part of the structure that held you down. I let dad talk over you. I let mom disappear. I told myself I was neutral. But I wasn't. I was complicit. I didn't rush to comfort him. I didn't say, "It's okay." Because it wasn't. But I nodded. "Thank you for saying that." He left before dessert, hugging me tightly at the door. Next year, he said, "I want to bring Emma and the kids. If you'll have us." "I think I'd like that," I replied. After he left, Dana reappeared with her signature dessert, chocolate bread pudding with a bourbon glaze, and we ate in sweatpants, watching an old holiday movie on mute with our own narration over top. It was silly and warm and entirely unremarkable. And yet, it felt like everything I'd been aching for, comfort that didn't come with conditions. As the night wound down, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Your father asked if I'd pass along a message. He wanted you to know he's reading your new script. He said he doesn't understand it yet, but he wants to. He's trying." I stared at the message for a long time.
Trying.
That word used to make me skeptical.
But now?
It made me still. Not hopeful, not elated, just steady. Because trying was more than he'd ever done before. I replied simply, "Thanks for letting me know. Happy Thanksgiving." She responded, "I'm thankful for your voice, Liv. And for the fact that the world finally hears it the way I should have all along." Weeks passed. Winter crept in with gray skies and breathy windows. I worked late nights in my studio, drinking too much coffee and sketching scenes for the new book. The girl with the jars of regret had taken on a life of her own. Funny, sharp, deeply intuitive. Not everything had to be grief, I reminded myself. Healing didn't always have to hurt. Then, one quiet morning, I got a package. No name on the return label. Just my address, written in that unmistakably neat, all-caps print. Inside the box was a framed photograph. A copy of the Echo panel where she holds the mirror up to her faceless father, but something had changed. The frame was hand-carved wood. And behind the panel, a handwritten note.
I still don't know how to say it.
But I see you. I always did. I just didn't know what I was looking at.
Dad.
I sat down on the floor, cradling the frame in my lap. Not because it fixed everything. It didn't. But because sometimes the smallest truth arrives in the quietest way. Spring came slowly, and with it, a calm I hadn't known in years. I moved into a new apartment with taller ceilings and bigger windows. I adopted a rescue cat named Clementine, who liked to sleep on my keyboard and meow at absolutely nothing. I took long walks in the evenings and started painting again, real paintings with no captions, no audiences, just color. My second book was picked up by the publisher. The girl with the regret jars had her own cult following now. Camilla said it was going to be my breakout piece. "You're not just the girl who escaped her family anymore," she said. "You're becoming the artist who defines her own lane." And the more I created, the less I needed to be seen. Because I already was. Not just by the world, but by myself. One afternoon, sitting in the window of my studio, I pulled out a worn notebook. The one I used to carry everywhere before Echo, before the posts, before the silence was broken. On the first page, I scribbled a new title, The Art of Leaving Quietly. And below it, a question. What happens after the scream? I wasn't sure yet, but I was ready to find out. Because healing doesn't end with confrontation. It begins with return. To yourself. To your voice. To the quiet that no longer threatens to erase you.
Just holds you.
Like breath. Like truth. Like a home you finally built with your own hands. So if you're reading this, and you've ever felt like the loser at your own family table, know this. You're not too sensitive. You're not too much. You are not invisible. You're not the problem. And even if no one ever says they're proud of you, be proud of yourself for surviving in silence and then choosing to speak. Even if it shook the room. Even if they never clap. You still deserve to take up space. Just like Echo.
Just like me.
Just like you.